Okay, okay. So, hello everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're very happy that you've joined us here today for a special edition of Discouraged. So, before we begin, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Re-Cognising Dance, our platform. We began this online platform a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago, with the intention of making dance scholarship and dance history and the socio-political connections with that Indian dance has with other disciplines more accessible to practitioners, and also to make scholars and practitioners accessible to each other, and to allay misunderstandings and assumptions that we make coming from different backgrounds and coming from different experiences of learning dance. And with that, we started this platform called Re-Cognising Dance, and we do a bunch of things. Our pillar series is called the Scholar Series, where we invite scholars from all over the world, experts on Indian dance scholarship, to speak about various aspects of dance history and various dance forms and their histories. And we've had scholars such as Saskia Kersenbohm, Amrit Srinivasan, Dr. Yashoda Thakur, Matthew Allen, VR Devika, and we slowly branched out as we realized that we couldn't just stick to Bharatanatyam, and we wanted to broaden our scope. So we invited Dr. Pallavi Chakravarti and Margaret Walker for Kathak, Frederick Apfel-Marglin for Odissi, and we've had Anvesha Mahanta and Arsha Sethi for Satya recently. Donovan Robert for pictorial aspects of dance history, and several others. Apart from the Scholar Series, we also do a series called Discouraged, which is one of the series that you're a part of today. And this one deals with more contemporary issues, more modern day concerns and issues that either plague or concern practitioners of dance. So we've had editions on body shaming, on gender, on
injury,
way to perform on injuries, and now something on managing our finances. Apart from that, we also do a reading group for people who are interested in reading together, and we discuss readings, we send readings beforehand. And we've also done workshops for children on dance history by really simplifying the sort of academic jargon and the very heavy academia into simple, exciting, colorful workbooks that children can take home with them. And we've had a couple of very successful workshops. So this is what Re-Cognising Dance does. And last month we were awarded a grant, an arts practice grant by India Foundation for the Arts. And the Scholar Series and Discouraged is a part of a foundation project that is implemented by India Foundation for the Arts under the Arts Practice program. And this program has been made possible through the Sony Entertainment Fund. Yes. So before I go further, actually, that's it. I'm done with the introduction for Re-Cognising Dance.
I think you've given a nice and elaborate introduction to our work. Thank you.
I didn't miss out anything, right?
I just wanted to add, we're also trying to do this series called Across the Border. We did one session on Bharatanatyam in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and hopefully we are looking at soon Sri Lanka and other countries that discuss Bharatanatyam and dance forms around the globe, Indian dance practiced around the globe. So that's about our work. And thank you, Srinivas, for agreeing to be a part of this. We don't introduce the speakers. We don't give them an elaborate introduction. We jump straight into the session. But this session has come out of a lot of discussion amongst the three of us. We've always been complaining about how, as artists, we are constantly poor, but we're all not just poor because of lack of funding, but also because we don't know how to manage our finances, and there is nobody to tell us what we should do, how we should do. And this idea has been brewing for a long time, and Srinivas jumped on this and said he can do this for us. So really grateful to you, Srinivas, for agreeing to be a part of this.
Okay, screen is frozen.
My screen is frozen. Is it okay now? uh, Aranyani, can you take over? I'll just probably change my internet. You ask the first question. I'll be back.
All right. I think Maha's getting some internet connection sorted out. So we're just going to go straight into the first question. So our first question to you, Srinivas, is how do artists or dancers deal with the uncertainties in income? I mean, if you're a full-time artist, you do not have the shelter of a corporate job or a stable, regular monthly income, and you're full-time doing something to do with the arts. How do you focus on increasing your income over the years? And as a freelancer, if your income is not received regularly, how do you ensure that you follow a healthy financial practice as someone whose periodicity of income is irregularly timed?
Sure. Thank you so much for that question, Aranyani. So before I answer that question, let me tell you all that this is going to be a session where we are going to look at topics from a very wide angle. I mean, we've designed the session such that even someone who's not really well versed in any concepts related to finance would be able to easily understand whatever we're about to discuss. So just wanted to let you all know that. So to answer your question, Aranyani, I mean, it is a really good question because artists as such are not going to have a monthly income. In the sense, it's not going to be like someone who's in a corporate job. So the majority of people that we know will be having stable corporate jobs where a certain amount would be credited into their bank accounts on the first of every month. But for an artist, it certainly isn't going to be like that. So in order to really make use of the funds which are not going to be very periodical, so let me first take you through like two main streams of income that artists usually have. So the first source of income would be from performances. Assuming you are a performing artist, the remuneration that you get from performances is one main source of income for you. And the second source of income is going to be from your classes, and because teaching and performing are the two main activities that any artist is going to engage in. So when it comes to classes, I guess there is a certain sort of predictability as to how much is going to come and when it's going to come. But when it comes to performances, that isn't really fixed, and it depends on whether you are being invited to perform, the opportunities that are at hand. So what I would suggest is, when you know that your income streams are going to be irregular, you need to be even more stringent when it comes to your spending, and you must really allocate a good amount of your income into savings. So another very important point with respect to artists especially is that if you notice someone who's in a regular corporate job, or the mainstream what many people do, they are going to, their income is going to increase across the years. So as they grow older with experience, and you know their income is going to increase across the years. But if you take an artist, a performing artist at least, is not going to really be in the limelight throughout their life. Unfortunately for an artist, the number of years where they actively perform and make a sizable sum of money is going to be quite limited, and it's going to be limited to a certain maybe 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. I mean, with due respect to everyone who's doing well, even during their final years, I mean during even their old age, you're not going to have such a kind of increasing income pattern. So it becomes really important that you center your savings in such a manner that you have enough money saved for the future. And another very important point is when your source of income is irregular and it's not periodical, you need to make sure that you engage in short term saving. Short term saving meaning the amounts which you will be needing after 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. So that needs to be diligently planned. So for someone who gets a monthly salary, that might not really be necessary. But for an artist who suddenly gets a bulk amount in their bank account, there shouldn't be an impulsive need to spend all the money, and there should be awareness and knowledge on how much I should really take out and save for the short term as well as for the long term. So this is what I feel when it comes to irregular streams of income. And to answer your second question, where you asked, how do I increase my income across the year? So, how do I focus on increasing my income? So today, like a lot of people, even non-artists, are focusing on multiple streams of income. So what is typically called side hustle, or informally called side hustle, or a side job, or whatever it is. I mean, for a dancer, I really understand that as artists, we are more focused into bringing in new works of art. We are more engaged in the creative process. So where is the time to actually have multiple streams of income, engage in multiple occupations? It really is a difficult thing to do. But today, like, you have several options where you can even earn from your home. There are many avenues. It depends depending on your skills. There are many options. I mean, it might sound like, why am I being asked to do something which I'm not good at or I'm not interested? But at least until you find your footing and you're able to really generate a lot of money, I mean, according to your lifestyle, it's always better to focus on multiple streams of income depending on your skills and requirements. So yeah, we'll talk about this a little later. So that is what I feel.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Shall I take the next question, Erin? Okay, fine. Yeah. So thank you, Srinivas. I think that kind of leads us to the next question. Can you talk to us on why savings are important? And but can you be with specific on how much of the income should be saved, and how regularly can I save, and how do I, like you just spoke about short term saving, how do I allocate my funds between long term and short term saving, and when I start saving, what are the things I should keep in mind when I start my journey into savings? Yeah.
All right. So this is a fairly objective question. I mean, subjective question, because how much to save is really dependent on each person's capacities as well as their lifestyle as well as their requirements, and it really varies from person to person. But I feel that having the awareness to actually save every month, because that is a form of discipline, isn't it? Earmarking a certain amount from your income for another purpose, like not spending it and storing it safe, is a good habit. So inculcating that itself is a great starting point. So when it comes to the allocation of how much you should save, so I would personally say a minimum of 20% of your income, if it's saved every year, it would really be great. And but there are people who manage to save even 30 to 40% of their income. So by save, we actually we need to understand what save is, because there are multiple ways to save money as such. It isn't necessarily earmarking your funds and storing them in a fixed deposit or earmarking them separately. So there are other ways to save money as well, like even taking insurance is a way of saving money, I would say, because you even get tax benefits on life insurance and health insurance. So those are all not necessarily expenses, so they are also a form of saving. And to answer your question on for what things should I save, and for what things should I save short term, and for what things should I save long term. So this is very important, I would say. In the long term, one of the most important aspects for which you need to save is retirement, because whatever profession you follow, I mean, whatever your occupation is, you are going to have a certain date after which you might not be able to engage in it with the same vigor and enthusiasm, or your health might not permit you to engage in that occupation. So it becomes very important that you save up for retirement. Now, the standard age for retirement is 60, but there are many people who say, I want to retire at 40 and I want to retire at 50. And what we need to realize is that that is even more harder, because you need to be even more rigorous in your savings, and you need to be really regular in your savings in order to retire early, I would say. That is one main need. And apart from that, what I would suggest for anybody, not just for artists or dancers, is to save with goals in mind. Because like mindlessly saving the money and storing them, or I mean, just saving the money without any goal in mind is not really going to help. So saving should be goal based. So what could be your goals? Like there are many goals that people have. Some might want to buy a house. Like they'll be saving to make the down payment for a house. That could be a goal. Some might be saving for their children's education, which will happen, like depending on the age of your child. If it's going to happen in 20 years, you need to really anticipate how much money I will be needing after 20 years and how much I should save now. So this form of goal based savings is the best form. I mean, this is the only way to save, at least according to me. A lot of people don't really focus on these goals, and they just park their money in wherever the returns are high, or because their friends have invested in a particular form of an instrument, so they also opt for it. So better not do that, and try to first list down what your financial goals are and then start saving. So this is for the long term. So then you ask me about the short term savings. So when it comes to short term, like assuming short term means less than 1 year. So this form of saving is very very important and very difficult to do, because you might be needing a sizable amount after 6 months. So you need to diligently save for the next 5 months in order for you to get that amount during your sixth month or your ninth month. And when it comes to short term savings, there isn't really going to be a lot of interest or income on the savings. See, why do we save money? In the long run, we want that money to grow, right? That is the aim of saving. So how does the money grow? It grows by way of interest, or if you invest in the share market, it's going to give you dividends, and the price of the share is going to increase, so you're going to get something called a capital gain on the price of the share. So these are all the various income streams associated with the investment that you make. But when it comes to short term, you're not going to really earn a lot of returns, because the period for which you're parking the money is short. So it becomes even more important to actually know where to put the money if you are saving short term, and where to put the money when it comes to long term. So that distinction and that awareness and knowledge is necessary as to how much you should save for the short term and how much you should save for the long term. And the word that I'd like to highlight is goals. So make sure that you have the goals and the target amount, when you need the amount, and all of these are quite important. Then only you can decide how to invest your money and where to park your money. So it starts with goals.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So we've discussed how much to save. You were saying that there's 20% at least and all of that. But where should we save the amounts that we where should we save these amounts? Where should we invest this money? There are many avenues to make sure that the money that is saved becomes sizable enough to meet several of the requirements. And just as another sub question to that, you were talking about long term options for investments. I think one of the things that really worries people about long term investments is, will they be able to pull that money out in case there's an emergency or something? So could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, naturally, that is the next question. So we talk so much about savings. So where do we actually park the money in order for it to grow and help us reach our goals? So first, let's start with long term, because that is invariably more important than your short term savings. So when it comes to long term savings, or when it comes to any form of savings, the main factor that you need to take into account is risk. So the greater the risk that you take, the greater are your returns. So that is the mantra for saving. So how do I put it, like, which is the riskiest option out there? Like, invariably, it's investing in the stock market, investing in equities, shares. So that is the riskiest option that is ever there, and that is the reason why people make a lot of money in the stock market, because of the risk associated with it. The returns are also higher. Now a lot of people ask me that, if should I learn about share trading, should I learn about investing in equities, is that a very good option for me to even earn a passive income on the side? So I mean, that is a great option for you to really explore, but it's not really for everyone. I mean, it requires a lot of education and awareness, and it requires a certain period of time until until you are really well versed with the stock market. But the stock market is a great option for long term investing, because if you look at the stock market, people do make a lot of money in the short run. I mean, you do hear of that a lot, but what people don't really talk about is long term investing in the share market, because the prices of certain shares that you might be tracking the prices of certain popular corporate companies and their shares, like for instance an IT giant like TCS or Infosys. So these companies have grown so much within the past decade. Like, even if you had invested a very small amount in a share of TCS or Infosys, it would have grown at least 10 times now, like after a decade. So people don't realize that stock market is a great option for long term investing, and the younger you are, the more risk that you can take. So stock market is a great option. And apart from that, there are many other safer options as well for individuals to save in the long term. So there's saving for retirement. So if you wish to save for retirement, there are schemes like the National Pension Scheme. It's called NPS, and it's by the government. So it's relatively a safer place to park your funds. So what retirement schemes like that do is basically get money from you. You would contribute a certain amount from your income on a monthly basis, or you can contribute whenever you wish to, when it comes to schemes like NPS. And once you hit a certain age, 60 for instance, they'll start giving you pension. See, why I'm stressing upon this is, for artists or dancers, you're not going to really have something like PF or such kinds of benefits that people in the corporate world have. So what these PF and what these other things do is guarantee a certain amount of money post retirement for the employees who are working in such companies where PF is applicable. So artists really have to focus on how they are going to survive in their older, when they become old. And saving for retirement is really important, but there are many other avenues, just like NPS. There are private fund houses that offer retirement saving schemes, so that is another great way to park your funds. And then there's always there are many kinds of deposits. So the main kind of deposit that you would be aware of is fixed deposit with a bank. I mean, that is the least riskiest option, really. So you have fixed deposits with banks, you have long term fixed deposits with greater tenures of 5 years or 3 years. I mean, the longer you park your funds in deposits, you would get a greater amount of interest. So, and there are also corporate deposits, which these companies also accept deposits. They are slightly more riskier. So these are there. And apart from that, even less riskier option than a deposit is to invest in government bonds. So this is a kind of instrument that will give you a guaranteed rate of return, but it won't be really that risky. So the return will also be less. So there are many ways to really uh, park your funds. So these are some of the options in long term investing. When it comes to short term investing, many people, what they do is, if they want money in 6 months or 9 months, what they really do is they just keep the money in their savings bank account. I mean, the bank account where you get your income, the regular savings bank account, they just keep the money idle in that account because they really don't know where to park their money for 3 months or 6 months. So many people think it's not possible for me to park my funds short term, because even a fixed deposit, unless you park it for an year, it might give you very abysmal returns. So a lot of people are hesitant, but that definitely shouldn't be the case, because your savings bank account will really not fetch you more than a maximum of 4% of interest, so which is very less. Even for the short term, there are options like liquid funds. So liquid funds are a type of mutual fund where you can park your money for short term periods like 3 months or 6 months. And these liquid funds, basically they invest the money which you give them, they invest it in securities like government bonds, treasury bills. So these are all typically very low risk investment options, and it's managed by a professional mutual fund house. So these earn slightly better returns than your fixed deposit if you want to park funds in the short term. So these are all things that people may not really be aware of, or people might be ignoring because they're really scared to experiment and do new things. But there are a lot of options, is what I would like to say. I hope I answered your question. Was there anything else, Ananyani?
I think you answered the subsequent question as well. So,
Okay.
so I think, yeah. So we'll move to the next question. If we have any more questions in this section, we'll come back to that later. All right.
Sure.
So the next question we wanted to ask is, can you talk to us about borrowing? We all have to take loans at some point in our life, maybe from a bank or other forms of financial institutions. And as artists, can you tell us something about borrowing money, and how do we borrow money diligently, and how do we employ the funds we borrow uh, in a disciplined fashion? And also, how do we because see, I mean, I can talk for many people here. We have a very irregular stream of income. We don't have salary slips to show. We don't have. So how do we? What is? Are we even eligible to borrow money from in many from big financial institutions? And how can you talk to us about that aspect of
Yeah,
diligence in borrowing?
sure. I mean, that is a great question, and this is something which everyone should know. I mean, a lot of people don't know. So let me start with a story, because too much finance talk is also a little boring for some people. So let me start with a story. So there was a very senior natyacharya, or a dance teacher, who was really the recipient of several national awards, a really famous artist. And he was in his prime. I mean, he had crossed his middle age, and he was at that phase of his life where people really respected him. He ran a dance institution, and he had traveled abroad extensively, the typical senior dancer. So this particular Natyacharya really uh, came from very difficult means, and he really made a name, and he earned a lot of money, and he grew up in a very inspiring way for a lot of people. So what happened was, one day he went to the bank, and fortunately or unfortunately, this particular dance teacher was quite a, what could you say, a principled man. So he was someone who always said, I'm very very disciplined, and even when it comes to money, I'm like really great at it. But today there is a situation where I need a loan, because all through my life I've lived in a rented house, and you know how hard it is for artists to actually rent a house, because not a lot of people want to rent their houses out to artists. There's still that kind of, that discrimination which is there. So finally I'm at that stage of my life where I want to buy a house. I'm like 50, 55. So let me, but I don't really have the funds to buy a house. I mean, at least not the entire amount. So let me go to a bank, and and he hoped that it would be easy, because this is going to be a secured loan, right? The house is going to act as the security for the bank to give the loan. So it's a secured loan. So which is really easy to get for a lot of people. So he went to the bank, and even though everybody in the bank knew him and he was such a famous figure, he was denied the loan. And he was like really frustrated, and he told the bank manager, look, sir, I mean, I'm such a famous artist and I'm such a disciplined person, more than that. And to tell you the truth, I haven't borrowed even a single rupee in my entire life. Formally, I haven't borrowed even a single rupee. This is the first time I'm coming for a loan. So I'm really surprised that my loan was rejected. And then the bank manager said, that is precisely the reason why your loan is rejected, because you have never availed any loans in your entire life. So there is something called a credit history. So there is something called credit ratings, where there are certain institutions like CRISIL, CIBIL, etc. So these are institutions that maintain the credit scores of every individual in the country, whoever seeks to borrow funds from a financial institution. So it turned out that that particular Natyacharya had never availed a loan. So the bank really didn't want to take the risk of giving him a loan, because the bank didn't know if he will repay the loan on time and will he do it properly. So what is credit history? Credit history and a credit score is basically given to individuals for timely repayment of their loans. So if suppose you've taken a vehicle loan, like you wanted a car, so you've taken a vehicle loan from a bank. If you make your payments diligently, properly, on time, and without any default, you will have a good credit score, which will be maintained by these organizations. So this particular person couldn't get a loan because he was not aware that even borrowing is important. So what I'd like to tell you all is, when you get to a certain point of time in your life, start taking loans from the bank. I mean, this might sound really why should I be forced to take money even if I don't need it? But that certainly isn't the case. You must start building your credit history from a very young age. As soon as you have a certain regular stream of income, and you start filing taxes, etc., and you have a certain amount of money in your bank on an annual basis, you are able to say, I'm making this much. So when you get to that stage, please ensure that you start entering the formal credit institutions, and start getting you can start with a hypothecated loan, meaning a loan where which is secured against a particular asset. So the most common type of loan for that is a vehicle loan. So you can get a loan to buy a two wheeler or a car. That is a way to start. I mean, so gradually people get credit cards. So but the fact that people don't let you know is that even for a credit card or anything, like, you need a credit history. And if unless you start borrowing at the appropriate time, even when you're older, you might be rejected for loan. So that is something that you need to keep in mind. And when it comes to borrowing, another very important aspect is, like, for example, let's say you are a dancer today, and in 5 years or 10 years you become really senior enough to open a dance institution, so it becomes a reality, like what you dreamed of became a reality today. So at that point of time, like once you open a dance institution, you will be needing funds for various reasons, isn't it? You might want to expand operations, you might want money to really do the interiors at your dance studio, you might need money for so many reasons. So uh, unless you demonstrate to whoever you're asking money from, the lender, that you have a regular source of income, that I am reputed and I have these many, they're going to ask you so many details when you go for a loan. So it makes sense to enter the formal credit system at an early age, and also borrow funds for your business needs. So, I mean, even a dance institution is a business, right? So there are working capital requirements. You might need to pay rent, you might need to pay salaries. So when it comes to all of that, you might also need to borrow money for various reasons. So entering into that and borrowing for your business and all of this becomes important as soon as you grow. So you need to have the awareness that you need to start getting into the credit system. So that is something that not a lot of people do. And now let's see what happens after you take the loan. So once you do take a loan, it becomes important that you repay it on time. So what happens is, a loan is also, unfortunately, it's a form of discipline. I mean, you do start working hard and you start tracking your expenses. You see how much you save every month, because this loan is going to be a monthly commitment for you, which you have to repay. So this will also inculcate a sense of discipline into you. And so loans are not all that bad, like, because as a culture we are taught from childhood that borrowing is wrong, and that it's better to not borrow at all. That is really not practical in today's financial scenario. And especially artists, because of the uncertainty in your income, in our income, and because of that, there is a need to always juggle around funds a bit, isn't it? Like, borrow some money, use it for a certain purpose. And because this borrowing will bring in that discipline and that need to manage your funds more effectively. So I'm not saying borrow 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs. You can start small, like borrow like 50,000 or 1 lakh for your two wheeler or something, like, or even related to your business. You could borrow, like, start entering into the financial system as soon as possible. And in order for you to do that, you really need to file income tax returns and all of that. So I guess we'll be talking about that. So Maha, I hope I answered your question. Was there
Wow.
anything else?
No, no, this was brilliant. And I was just thinking how wrongly informed and ignorant we all are about this. Thank you so much, Srinivas. It was great. Yeah, I think Aranyani, you get the
Yeah,
next.
yeah, I'll take the next question. I was also just going to say that I was of that very strong belief that I shouldn't ever borrow money from the bank. I should be loan free. And so I've always been very hesitant to do that. Despite the fact that my husband told me that it's important, all this that you're telling me. Yeah, he told me, but I was just like, okay. So the next question that we have to ask you is about insurance. How important is it to insure one's life? And we know that there are two main kinds of insurance: there's health insurance and life insurance. What are your thoughts on all of this overwhelming number of insurance products that are there, and there are the different kinds of policies? How does one choose the best type of insurance?
Sure. This is also a very important aspect that we need to keep in mind. So, first, let's talk about life insurance. So, life insurance is something that is absolutely necessary for everybody. So, let's get that straight first. because life insurance, what it basically does is, upon your passing away, like whenever that is going to happen, I mean, it's a certain event that is going to happen. Let's be practical and not be sentimental and say, I am not going to die at all. I mean, that is not happening. So one day we are going to leave this world. So at that point of time, how will your survivors and your dependents and basically your loved ones, how will they cope with the financial loss that you bring, that your death brings to the family? Because it's very important, because if an earning member of the family suddenly passes away, it's really going to be a huge jolt for the rest of the family, and especially it's going to be a great strain on their finances. And this is irrespective of the person's occupation. Like, you could be an artist, you could be a professional, you could work in a company, and you could do whatever, but you need to provide for your dependents and your loved ones once you pass away. I mean, that is more of a humanitarian thing that you should do, more than making financial sense. Of course, it does make financial sense as well. So this is what the basic aim of life insurance is. So as you said, Aranyani, so today there are like an overwhelming amount of life insurance products out there, and a lot of competing life insurance agents who try to push policies and make you take something just because you're their friend, or there are so many people just take insurance policies without actually reading into the fine text or actually knowing what the purpose of taking a life insurance policy is. So unfortunately, what happens is that there are the pure term insurance policies. So they are called term insurance policies. They are the most affordable and the best type of insurance, life insurance product that you should opt for. And then there are the kinds of insurance products where you are promised a certain amount of money periodically, and certain policies, they tell you that once you hit a certain age, and if you are still alive, for instance, if you hit 60 and you're still alive, we'll give you the cover. I mean, how much you've insured yourself for is called the cover of the policy. You could be covered for 50 lakhs, you could be covered for 1 crore, depending on how much money you wish to have upon the event happening, the death, or you hitting a certain age. So there are insurance policies that promise that if you live through this, like if you live at the age of 60 and if you don't die, we'll give you a certain sum of money. And then there are many. So there are, what is actually happening is that they're combining investment and insurance, many of these products. So what is an investment? An investment is something that gives you a certain amount of money at a certain point of time, or post its maturity it's going to give you a huge sum. So what you need to keep in mind is that these mixed products that combine investment and insurance are not really going to be useful for you. So I would personally suggest everyone to opt for a term insurance policy. So this policy is purely the type of policy where your loved ones will get a certain amount of sum when you die. So this is certainly, it doesn't really have any uncertainties associated with it. If you're alive, and these other, getting a certain amount of, I mean, if you want a certain amount of money at a particular age, if you want a huge amount of money when you hit 60 for a retirement, there are other investment streams. Don't combine that with your insurance and opt for these products like ULIPs, unit linked insurance plans. So these are other kinds of plans where they combine investment and insurance. I would say it's best to keep both of them separate. So that is about life insurance. The next, yeah, let's talk about health insurance as well, and then I'll tell you another real life story that happened to an artist when it comes to insurance. So let's look at health insurance. Health insurance is taken so that if you suffer from poor health, or if you are unfortunately admitted in a hospital for a major surgery or an emergency, an accident, or any kind of medical, an unforeseen event, medical event, to make sure that your medical expenses are covered, we take a health insurance policy. So even when it comes to health insurance, there are many products, and the premiums associated with these products vary greatly depending on the kinds of illnesses they cover, because there are certain illnesses that are termed, critical illnesses, and you might have to shell out a little bit more if you have a medical history. For instance, if you are someone with blood pressure or hypertension or whatever, there are many medical ailments which will cost you more. The premium will cost you more if you have an underlying illness. So, but what I would suggest is it's very important that you take a good health insurance cover. I mean, a sizable amount, because everybody knows the cost of hospitalization these days. Private hospitals, they charge a lot of money, and it makes sense to actually anticipate how much money you will be needing in the event of a medical emergency. For instance, some people opt for like 20 lakhs cover, or some people opt for 40 lakhs cover. I mean, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, depending on their premium paying capacity, because the premium is going to be higher if the cover is going to be higher. And depending on your medical history, you might need to see if you need a more elaborate health insurance product that covers critical illnesses, etc., etc. So, one important point to remember when it comes to both life as well as health insurance is for you to take the insurance when you are young. So this is something that not a lot of people know. So when you, as you grow older, the premium that insurance companies charge from you is going to be higher, because the risk for them is higher. Because a person who's like 40, if they take health insurance, they're more likely to fall sick and seek hospitalization, because they're older, right? So a person who takes their health insurance at 20 is going to relatively pay a lesser amount of premium across the years. So the same holds true for life insurance as well. So when it comes to life insurance, as soon as you hit a certain age, as soon as you hit an age where you start earning incomes, because even life insurance, they don't uh, offer you the insurance unless you prove to them that you are earning income. So as soon as you start earning income, it could be at 20, it could be at 22. Some people might start earning at 18. So when you start earning, it's important that you simultaneously start for the life insurance. I mean, start spending on this. So many people, even for their children, they even when the child is very young, they opt for life insurance. I mean, that is very necessary. So that also makes sense. And when it comes to choosing from several products, what I would suggest is today there are many online portals which allow you to compare how much premium you have to pay, what the various options are, what are the various companies that offer insurance. So make use of these online portals and do your spade work. Watch videos on YouTube. There's so much information online out there before you make these important decisions. So I'll just end with this small story that also will hopefully serve as a lesson for all of us. So there was one dancer, I mean a dance guru. He wasn't a dancer per se, he was a very famous guru. So what happened was he was part of an association of dancers. So these classical dance associations exist, right? Like benefit, like they have a certain group of members, and they have a shared agenda. So he was part of that, and that particular association offered him a group life insurance policy. So what we were talking about all this time is an individual policy which you as an individual will be taking. But there are also options like group insurance where like for instance, if you work in a particular company, they'll cover all their employees in a group life insurance scheme, or even for health insurance there's group health insurance. So this particular artist was under the impression that he does have insurance coverage because he's covered under this group policy, and he didn't really opt for an individual insurance policy for himself. So what happened was, one day unfortunately he passed away, and his kith and kin, his spouse and children, got a very meager sum of money as he, after he died. That was because he was part of only the group insurance, and group insurance really doesn't have a great cover, individual cover. Because if you're going to insure for like 100 people in the association, they might insure for like 2 lakhs per person, like 2 lakhs cover, because even a group insurance policy is going to cost the association. So even if they recover the policy amount from the particular dancer or artist, it's no one is going to be a member of the association if they demand huge sums for insurance and all of that, because these are all like benefits that are offered when you're part of that association, right? So unfortunately, he was not aware of this particular difference between group and individual. So because of this, immediate family member suffered a very great financial setback when he passed away. So it's very important that people are aware that they have individual insurance policies. Certain people are of the opinion that their spouses have them covered in a family floater or in a corporate group insurance policy. I mean, if that's there, that's good. Don't bother it, but make sure that you have adequate individual cover in your name. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Srinivas. Every question and every answer is so insightful, and I'm sure everyone's here is going to agree. So the next question I had is, talk to us about taxes. This happened when I moved back to India, and I was talking to my colleagues and friends, and I realized very few people are aware that we have to file taxes, and that it is important. So can you talk to us about taxes, and why is it important for artists to file income returns, and why is it, of course it's very important as a citizen to file taxes and pay your taxes to the government, but what are the things that I need to keep in mind when I file taxes, and how do I report my income to file the IT returns, and how important is this process of filing taxes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that is another very important question that you asked, Maha. So, what we generally notice is that many artists are not really filing their income tax returns because, like many people don't really want to enter into the formal banking system. Like there are certain artists and art teachers who really get cash from their disciples or from their students, and they don't really get money in their bank account. So these are all ways which are necessarily evading taxes. But what I would say is it's actually good to file taxes, because that that negative outlook shouldn't be there, that hesitance to file taxes shouldn't be there. Why? Basically because even for an artist it really makes sense to file income tax returns and show that you are earning this much amount of money every year, because even in the future, like for instance we were talking about borrowing. So if you want to borrow some sum of money from the bank, they are going to ask you about your income tax returns, and they're going to ask you how much money you make every year. So for that, in order for you to do that, it becomes very important that you get all the receipts formally, like in your bank account. uh, they should be traceable and they should be in the formal banking system. And you must also maintain at least a very rudimentary form of accounting, like accounts which you must maintain. I mean, it needn't be that elaborate, or with your debit, credit and all of that, it needn't be that elaborate, but you must really maintain some form of accounting, and you must track the amount of income that you get and the amount of expenses that also happen. And it's really important that you do file income tax returns. So like a lot of artists really they don't think of themselves as professionals, because that, I think that is quite important, because an artist is as professional as someone who's in a corporate job. So doing all these things is really important for one's career and to grow, and to enter into the formal borrowing and banking system. So this does make sense. And another good benefit that if you file your income tax returns is that the income that you earn from your performances or from your dance classes or any other source of income, so it's going to be taxed as profits and gains from business or profession. So this is called PGBP. It's a head of income. So in income tax, there are various heads of income. So a person who's salaried will get their income taxed under the head salaries, and someone who has investments and they make a gain on those investments, they buy and sell shares, for instance, they are going to be taxed under the head called capital gain. So these are all various heads of taxation, as they're called. So if you are going to show a certain amount of income as your profits and gains from business or profession, if you're going to show it as that, as your business income as it's otherwise called, you are allowed to also show the expenses. So the word is profits. So what is profit? Profit is necessarily your income minus your expenses. So what happens is that if you earn say 10 lakhs from your income from teaching and performing, and if you have like 3 or 4 lakhs associated expenses with expenses associated with that income, like what could be your professional expenses, your business expense. Like for instance, if you run a dance studio, you will have rent, and you will, if you have employees, you will have salaries, and if you you will need assets for the dance institution, you will be purchasing a table, you'll be purchasing furniture, all that, the expenses associated with the dance school, they are allowed to be deducted against your income. So against your 10 lakhs of income, you're going to deduct like 3 or 4 lakhs of expenses, and the tax that you pay is going to be on the 6 lakhs, this 10 lakhs minus 4 lakhs. So this is a benefit that salaried people don't have. So if you are a salaried person, you are not allowed to show any expenses against your salary, and your income is not going to reduce on account of that. But if you are someone who's not a salaried person, and if you are earning business income, you are allowed to show your expenses as well, and only the profit is taxed. So this becomes quite important that you do show your income as dancers as business income, because this is what will be used by banks and several other places where they'll insist on how much you make every year. If you need further capital, if you need funding, so it becomes important that everybody really files their taxes. I mean, it's not really that complicated a process, and it's even there are many tax consultants and chartered accountants who are out there to help you, and for this particular filing of returns, you needn't do much. I mean, what you need to do is basically maintain accounts, like how much you actually make and how much you spend for your profession. So if you maintain those details, a finance professional is going to help you file your taxes, and it's not really going to cost much as well. And apart from expenses, another very important aspect are the deductions. So what are deductions? Like if you take a life insurance policy or a health insurance policy and you incur those premiums, right? You're going to incur a certain amount of premium every year. So these premiums are allowed as deductions from your income. So for instance, if you're paying 12,000 per annum for a life insurance policy, you're allowed to deduct that from your taxable profit. So this, what will happen is you will save taxes by making these important expenses like insurance. And there are also tax saving mutual funds. They're called ELSS, equity linked savings scheme. So there are many ways by which you are allowed to get these deductions from income tax, and they will invariably work to your favor if you have something like a housing loan, and the principal and interest that you pay on the housing loan is going to be allowed as a deduction here. So this is irrespective of whether you're a salaried person or if you have business income. So these deductions are available for everybody. So you can avail of these benefits only if you file your income tax returns and are aware that you are allowed these benefits. So that is what I wanted to say about income tax returns.
Thank you so much, Srinivas. That was a really detailed and I think very clear answer to our question. So, to conclude, before we open this out to all the viewers, I know that there are already questions pouring in. What do you feel that artists should do as a community to be more aware of finance and savings? How affordable are auditors, tax consultants, insurance agents, all of those guys, and how can we be more self sufficient when it comes to finances instead of relying upon other people for advice and guidance?
Yes, I mean, that really is an important aspect that we need to discuss, because people who are not really in the formal corporate space, their awareness of finance and savings is generally low, and I mean that shouldn't be there. And especially when it comes to artists and performing artists, what I genuinely feel is that artists need to get together, and as a community, I think we need to interact with each other more, and really at least have something like a Facebook group or something where we can get our queries related to finance answered, and also look at what other artists are doing, because like there are so many senior artists who have been managing their finances across the years. So if we could rope them in and form a community, it would be really great. Like how many of us, like especially during this pandemic which happened, not a lot of people were aware about how they could really get fees from students in foreign countries, because the online teaching really, that was when it blossomed because of the pandemic, and not a lot of people knew how to even set up something like a payment portal for getting fees in foreign currency from students who live abroad. Or sometimes people really didn't know how to operate a joint savings bank account, how to apply for it. There are so many things which people, the the necessity was there, but at that point of time they didn't have the awareness or the resources or the guidance that was needed, and it was really a lonely time, the pandemic, and especially when we were dealing with all these income uncertainties. So not even I mean, not only during the pandemic, even otherwise we need to form a community where we can support each other, a support group for finances as well, because we discuss a lot of things related to art and the creative process, and dance history and so many other things, but we don't focus on this, because but this is our daily bread and butter. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do anything else unless we have our finances sorted out. So like I would really be happy if artists really take the time to learn more about these things, and not really be of the opinion that I have a spouse who is better at this, or I have a sibling who's better at this, so I'm relying on them. Or I don't worry about these things because I'm young, and when I grow older I'll think about these things, so that it will become too late for you at that point of time. So make sure you are in the loop and you really read about stuff, watch, because there are so many YouTube channels today where finance concepts are really simplified, so I can give you suggestions for YouTube channels, etc. So make yourself informed, and you know keep this at the corner of your mind along with your art and all of that. Also make sure that you spend quite a lot of time on thinking about how you can save money, and how what your financial goals are, and how you are going to really grow across the years. So that is what I that's the suggestion that I have, Ananyani.
Thank you so much, Srinivas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I actually, Srinivas, if I may, I just wanted to add one personal incident about taxes so that it just helps everyone.
Okay.
I mean, even for applying for my visa for a for a tourist travel, I needed to show my tax returns because that was how I proved my income, that I have an income, a regular stream of income. So, and it was, it was, I mean, thank God I had it done. But really, I realized the importance then. And also, thank you for talking to us about don't leave it to a spouse, don't leave it to a sibling, because that's who I am. I, I just don't care. I felt you were talking to me there. So thank you so much, Srinivas. It was a fantastic. Every answer was very, very clear. Mm, I'll start reading out some of the questions that there are here. Before
Sure.
First question was from Damini. She says, "Could you suggest some practices on how an artist can keep track of income generated monthly from performances and teaching?"
Sure, Damini. So, certain good practices, meaning, so as I said, so first of all, make sure that you insist on bank payment. So, make sure that whatever income you're receiving on performances or teaching is credited to a dedicated bank account which you maintain for this purpose. I mean, it's okay to even open a separate account in the bank to make sure that only the income and expenses associated with your profession as an artist are going to really be parked in that particular bank account. So that is one great way. And secondly, like you should really maintain accounts. So what I mean by accounts is, like, it could be very simple, like you can just open an Excel sheet and just record how much income you are earning date wise, like how much money is credited in your bank account. You could also maintain an Excel sheet where you could also list down how much income you are expecting this month or in the next 3 months. So what amounts are due from your students or from, organizers, or how much income you are expecting. You can also track, I mean, you can also prepare a budget, so where you could really analyze how much expenses are going to take place in the month. So these are all, like, uh, what our parents and others did. As you know, they just used to write it down on a piece of paper. They used to maintain a notebook. So that is the basically that is what we are asking you to do in the form of an Excel sheet, which is basically nothing but a notebook. So it starts with preparing those accounts and maintaining like a books of accounts, as they call it. Like, you can maintain it in a basic form, because this is necessary for you to do other stuff like filing your income tax returns. Because what a person who files returns is going to ask you your bank statement, so that they can see how much is credited. But it will be so much more easier for them as well as you if you maintain a date wise, amount wise explanation or a narration along with each income and expense head as to what it actually is. So that is a great way to be conscious of how much is coming in and how much is going out. And it starts with tracking your bank account. So that is what I would say. That is a good practice.
I hope that answered your question, Damini. You're free to type in. I'll just take the next question now, Srinivas. Kirtana asks,
Sure.
can you tell us how much the percentage of returns in liquid funds is?
Yeah, Kirtana. I mean, liquid funds are mutual funds. So when it comes to mutual funds, liquid funds are particularly what they do is they invest the money. I mean, mutual funds, how they operate is they get money from multiple people. They pool in that money. So a person called a fund manager is engaged to actually manage the funds. So what happens is they pool in that money which they get from all the investors, and they decide where to park that money in order to get good returns. So it's basically, instead of us doing all this paid work and thinking where to really invest the money, they do that. So they employ fund managers, and what happens is that even the returns that you're getting on mutual funds, a small portion of those returns will a portion of that will go to the fund house, because that is like the expense to cover their expenses. Like, they need to make money, right? So a small portion of that will go to them. And but when it comes to liquid funds, they are very safe and they're not really that risky, because of the fact that they invest in government securities, treasury bills, and so these are all like short term, 90 days, 180 days investment instruments. So depending on the mutual fund house and the performance. I mean, liquid funds, it's not really that risky like how they're parking funds in equities. So you should be able to get more than your 4% on your savings bank account that you get here. You might get somewhere between 5 to 6%. And I mean, there are certain mutual fund houses that promise even 7% and such. There are such fund houses, but I would actually ask you to be a little bit careful on deciding which mutual fund house you're going to opt for. I mean, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind, even if it's a liquid fund, to see the performance of the fund, who the fund manager is, and there are certain factors, but certainly it will be better than your savings bank account. So even 5% is good, right? I mean, that 1% is going to really matter. And another very positive point about liquid funds are that you can really take the amount whenever you want. So there's not going to be a lock-in period, because what people naturally tend to do is, instead of savings bank account, they go to fixed deposit, because that is the next, I mean, that's the safest option. But fixed deposits have a holding period, right? Minimum of 3 months or 6 months, even short term deposits, I'm saying. But liquid funds don't have that lock in period, and you are free to really redeem the amount whenever you wish to. So that is a good option to park short term funds. And in a liquid fund, basically there are large corporate houses who even park the funds only for like 7 days. So there are liquid funds like that as well. And individuals like us can park it for like 3 months or 6 months. And liquid funds are also used to park like emergency funds. Like some people might be very heavily invested in the stock market, and the stock market might come down and they might need the money, they might need to sell some of the shares. So at that point of time, instead of losing money by selling the shares at a loss, they'll park some funds in liquid mutual funds, which they use to really for their financial needs at that point of time. So liquid funds are like an emergency saving instrument, as well as a better alternative to your savings bank accounts.
I'll read out the next question, Srinivas. This is from
Yeah.
Lakshmi. She's not here. That is a great insight on loans. Thank you. But if work comes to a standstill, as it happened during the initial months of COVID, wouldn't repaying the loans for an artist be much riskier? Would be glad to know your opinion on emergencies like this.
Sure, Lakshmi. I mean, that is a good question. So when it comes to taking loans, what I would suggest is like always make sure that you don't take a very heavy loan. Like make sure that it's something that you are capable of repaying. Like for instance, let's say you are capable enough to borrow like 2 lakhs, for instance. For 2 lakhs, suppose the monthly EMI that you have to pay to your financial institution, suppose it's 5,000, and you think I can make 5,000 a month is not a big deal for me, so let me borrow 2 lakhs. So in such a scenario, like don't borrow to your fullest capacity. So even a financial institution is going to look at what your capacity, repayment capacity is. But because you are an artist, and because there are uncertainties in income and things like the pandemic where your income is not going to be certain, make sure that you borrow small, because uh, in the sense, I'm assuming that you are borrowing only to get into the formal credit system, right? As we were discussing, just to start taking loans so that in the future getting a loan would be easier. So I'm assuming it isn't really, you're not borrowing for necessity, you're borrowing to enter into the financial system. So at that point of time, it makes sense to borrow very less. And like a suggestion that I would have is, like, suppose instead of 2 lakhs you're borrowing 1 lakh, and suppose what you can do is, at the same time when you're making this borrowing, you can park maybe 50,000 in a fixed deposit when you are doing this borrowing as well. So what happens is, like, if due to a certain circumstance you're not able to honor your EMIs, you can pre-close the loan, because these banks allow you to pre-close the loan, and you would have saved 50,000 on the side, right? You could use that to pre-close this loan so that you don't have the burden of monthly installments. I mean, there are ways like that, but basically I would say, don't take loans that you know that really choke your neck. So make sure at least during the initial years, just to get into the formal credit system, take a small loan, and more of just to get a loan instead of that being a necessity, because the loans that are necessary will be taken by you in the future, right? So at that point of time, I'm assuming your income will be sorted out, and I mean, you're not going to get a huge loan unless you prove to the bank that you are capable of repaying it. So that that is what I would suggest.
Yeah. I'll take the next question. Nicole asks, are there any artist-based community credit unions or stock market funds that are created based on artists' tendencies and income flows?
I mean, that is really a good question, Nicole. But I really don't know the situation abroad, in the European countries or in the United States, how it is. But in India, I don't believe we have such, a community credit union, or especially funds that are catered to, artists' financial flows, income flows. But what I would say is, fortunately or unfortunately, like, artists also have to, are forced to toe the line, like how corporate people who are working in a corporate job do, and basically try to do the same things as them. I mean, unfortunately, art is still not being considered something that is really necessary to the economy, right? I mean, that shouldn't be there. But even during the pandemic, what we saw was that artists were not really given importance as much as people, doing other professions. So there is always that lack of funding, and that, there's this, because this isn't really a capitalistic uh, occupation, art. So they haven't really brought out any financial products or institutions that specifically cater to artists' needs. I mean, I hope that they exist in countries like France or certain other countries that have a very good budget for funding arts. I mean, it should be there, but in India, I don't think we have that.
I think there's one last question from Nicole only, Srinivas. She asks, one way to accept international payments is to ask people to send funds via Wise, where it can be sent directly to your bank account from other countries with market currency exchange rate. Do you have advice about the safety of sending out your bank account information to students, or is it better to accept third party payment platforms like PayPal, Stripe for accepting payments?
Yeah, I think the second option which you mentioned, right? Third party payment platforms, I think these are more popular in India, like PayPal or Stripe. But unfortunately, like, not a lot of people are aware of how to, like, really open an account, I mean a PayPal account or a Stripe account, and how to channelize their funds into that. So that really needs some more awareness, especially in the artistic community. But I mean, is it safe to send out bank account information? I'm guessing it is quite safe. Like, presently, as far as I know, a lot of artists who get funds from abroad, they do share their bank account details, and students there, they have, as you said, there are, like, ways to send the amount to India. Like, there's Western Union money transfer. I mean, that is, like, quite popular in the Gulf. There are so many other platforms that make sure that, these are all the streams that are used by non-resident Indians to send money back home. So there are you able to hear me? Like, I'm saying, fail to detect your speaker.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, there are many safe ways to actually share your bank account and get the payment, but in the long run, I would advise artists to move on to these payment platforms, even though they charge a certain commission or something like that. It becomes safe even for the person who's sending the money, and it becomes easy because all they have to do is like click that link and go online and make that payment on PayPal or Stripe, which is much more easier and user friendly than actually going to a bank or doing a wire transfer to India. So
I
that's what I feel.
Srinivas. Yeah. So if, in fact, if we do that, it's much easier to keep track of debits and because Stripe, I mean, all these apps, Razorpay, Stripe, they generate a very nice receipt for you at the end of the month. So there's, you know, how exactly what has come into your account from where on what day. So it really makes the process also like, because someone had asked, how do we keep track? I think I know we are paying a commission, but you know, it is worth it. That
Absolutely.
yeah. Any more questions? Nicole says, thank you so much for the very clear description for each of these areas. And Damini says, this entire discussion was so enlightening. Thank you, Srinivas and Recognizing Dance Team. Yeah, Nicole, please. Yeah, you're free to interact.
I wanted to thank you. This was very interesting and very clear, each area you mentioned. One thing that I noticed when I was in India in 2016, November, was right around when there was the demonetization and that whole. And what I realized then is why it was actually very important for people to be in the formal banking system, because all those who had debit cards or, you know, digital payments were fine. It was no hassle. But all those who had to go to the ATM and get cash were completely out of luck at that point. So I think that's another reason why, if you only are cash based, then you have one less option. So if you have a balance of some cash, some credit, some debit, then you have more options if there's a situation that's risky.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Nicole. I mean, that was a really challenging time for so many people, demonetization, and they were really running around without knowing what they need to do with when they had so much cash and they really weren't part of the formal banking system. I mean, that was a wake-up call for a lot of people, and especially artists in India. Not all artists are really that formal when it comes to finances, and I think there's need for greater awareness, and especially among the folk artists and artists who live in rural India. Like they really are not that well informed, and I hope in the future that we also focus on educating and making them aware, even in the regional languages. Maha, I mean, that's also a good initiative that recognizing dance can take up in the
Yeah,
future.
that's a fantastic idea. But on a serious note, we were also thinking we should extend, because Srinivas gave us like really specific answers. And it was a very, very, very clear talk. And this is what we need, Dash. It's not about, you know, I'm sure you know much more, but this is exactly how I think. And I also feel much more motivated now, you know, because when I start out learning finance on YouTube with YouTube videos, I feel very intimidated. So I feel much more motivated today. So, and yeah, we also really want to look at doing something more long term. And Kirtana asks, can we reach out to you for financial consulting? Do you do it for the BPL?
I mean, I think it's more necessary for the BPL than anyone else.
Yeah, but yeah, like Nicole said, and as you spoke about it, and you know, probably having a small Facebook group on, you know, to ask each other these questions is also very, very important. I mean, not just to burden you. There is probably something I know, there's probably something Nicole and Kirtana know, there's something probably working very well in the US that Nicole can tell us. I really liked this idea of you know, a closer community, having a Facebook group where we ask each other questions, because Facebook also helps you ask anonymous questions today. So that's also, you know, if you are awkward about asking these questions, you can also go anonymous. And this is something we should like probably consider, opening a group and having that. I mean, that was also great. Yeah. Facebook community can also grow and include. Yes, Shubhat. I mean, you're already included, and we want to learn from you as well. Yeah, we should. But I also think, yes, to educate artists from other communities, rural communities, where English is also becoming a barrier, becomes very important, and we should consider doing this as well. Uh, Anybody else? Any other questions? Thank you, Shubha. Yes, definitely. And we love to do that. We'll probably do something, start something like this very soon. Uh, Anybody else? Any more questions? Okay. Srinivas, any more comments?
No, I don't have any comments, Maha. I mean, I'd just like to thank Recognizing Dance for this wonderful session. I mean, this, as I said, this is a way of for me to really give back to the artistic community that
You've
I
done
really,
wonderful. Yeah. I have to
yeah,
tell you, from the day I spoke to Srinivas about this session, he has been so meticulous about it. And this, I want everybody to know. I had one conversation with Srinivas and I told him, actually, there are two participants who raised hand. There's somebody else. I don't want to, there's somebody else. I can't see the name. Kirtana. Yeah, sure, Kirtana. Do you want?
Hi, Srinivas. Realized suddenly it just dawned onto me where I've just forgotten what is the meaning of financial planning. Being a student of finance, having worked in Goldman Sachs, as soon as I got married, I just dropped it. And this was so timely to kind of get back into what the basics of understanding planning, I mean, financial planning, and just the basics of savings. So thank you. This was just perfect timing for me. So
welcome. I'm really glad that you really found this session to be useful and
absolutely, Srinivas.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Maha and
yeah,
Aranyani. Such an important topic. And as artists, we always shy away from talking about money, which is kind of very silly of us to do. But we have to address this. We have to talk about it. We have to read about it a lot more to kind of actually be wise with our money. So thanks a lot for this
absolutely.
beautiful
Thank you
session.
so much. Yeah. Nicole also says another area for a session would be how to budget and plan for a performance, how to set one's professional or its in a manner based
Yes.
on clear financials. Yes, I think this is very, very important. Being professional is something we completely lack in this space, because yeah. And Lata says, good evening, wonderful session, thank you. I maintain my income and expenses on simple Excel sheets. If anyone wants help in that area, I could help out. Lata, if you wish to share your email ID, you can drop it here so that people can get in touch with you, or you could give it to us, and if someone wants your email, we'll pass it on to them, whatever works for you. Thank you for that offer, that's very kind of you. Yeah, but before I close this session, I just wanted to complete. So I had one call with Srinivas. I said, I want to do something like this, and he was on top of it. He very, very meticulous. I while I just gave him, first of all, I said we want to do this, and then I did not. He was behind me. He said, no, you have to be specific. Like today, he said, identify your goals in for investment are and investments are. He wanted his goals set for this talk very clearly, and I think that really drove the points home very clearly. And like Kirtana said, it was fantastic. So and then later he took a week out, to give this conversation some shape. We just, although I wanted to do something like this, we just gave him some very vague pointers. We never got to sit with him and discuss, and he did a great job of this, and we really have to thank you. And you have done more than giving back, Srinivas. We have to,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Maha.
And I'm sure Aranyani will agree with me, and I'm speaking for her as well when she says this. And
I'm here, and yes, I absolutely agree with everything that you said, Maha. And I would also like to thank you very much, Srinivas, for being here,
Yeah,
for sharing your thoughts, and for also giving us such great, detailed advice in really, really simple, understandable terms. Because I know, for speaking for myself, I get really kind of daunted and start feeling really overwhelmed when I speak to a lot of people about finance, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do that. So it's really nice to be able to talk to you and interact with you in that way, where we could get a clear idea from a layman's perspective. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you're welcome. And it was a pleasure doing this for recognizing dance. I mean, we
Thank you
should do
so much.
something else as well in the future.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. So if there is nothing else, I'll stop the recording.